And U.S. stocks and pretty flat for the week as investors weigh the implications of a dismal, that's the right word too, dismal jobs report which was released this morning. The economy, it only added 38,000 jobs. That's the worst monthly job gain in 6 years, September 2010. And the drop in unemployment, it only shows more disheartened Americans stop looking for it. It's almost 500,000 people just gave up and dropped out. Joining me now, Brenberg and Steve Cortes to discuss all this. Steve, I mean, when the participation rate, that's the fancy way of saying all of us who are eligible to work, who can work, are either working or looking for work. 500,000 people said, I give up. That is not a recovery, is it?
Right. And it hasn't been a recovery, by the way, for quite a long time, Adam. And, you know, listen, I don't want to be a grouch. We're going into a weekend. Summertime is coming up. You know, April showers are supposed to bring May flowers. In this case, they brought May dandelions at best. When President Obama came into office, there were 80 million working-age Americans out of the workforce. There are now 94 million working-age Americans out of the workforce, either by choice or because they simply can't find a job. This is a tragedy. This has not been a recovery of any substance.
Okay, so Brian, if I bring the issues that Steve just brought up, if I bring them up in discussions with friends, they'll say, this administration we've got more jobs than ever, and then I'll say, part-time. 468,000 people who want to work full-time are now working part-time.
That's the number you got to pay attention to here. That number, that total number now is almost 6.5 million, which is 2 million higher than it was before.
Yeah, it was 468,000 just in the month of May. Got shifted to part-time.
But you've got 6.5 million total, 2 million more than you had prior to the recession. And that's really the data that underlies the narrative we're seeing in this country. Obama's walking around telling us, you should be happy about the recovery. I'm doing a great job. And people are saying, but look at the jobs that I have, right? They're not the jobs that I want. It's this part-time work. I can't get any traction here. Yeah, we're creating jobs month to month, but they're not the kind of jobs that I can sustain a family on, that I can build a life on. That's the real story here. And now we have data to kind of support that feeling that everybody has.
It's not only a feeling, Steve. You know, I cover the coal industry sometimes, and I've listened to politicians say we have to retrain people. Here's just a fact, because we looked into this at Fox. If you're a coal worker, you're making anywhere, depending where you are in the industry, say about $52,000 a year. If you're in the solar industry, you're making about $40,000 a year. Right there, if you get retrained for solar, you're earning less money. But no one's building solar plants, say, in Hazard, Kentucky, or Charleston, West Virginia. So you look at this jobs report, and we're not even creating the kinds of jobs on a monthly basis we need to sustain a recovery, are we?
Right, and you're exactly right, Adam, but why aren't we? It's not because Americans aren't innovative. It's not because we're not working hard. And by the way, Brian, gosh, I wish I had a professor like you when I was in college. I had a bunch of, you know, pseudo-Marxists who were preaching leftist propaganda to me, so I am so happy to know that someone who respects free enterprise and capitalism is teaching our youth these days. Boy, do we need that. But I'll tell you this, as far as jobs go, it's so important, I think, for us to recognize what you're talking about, Adam, which is that, and again, Americans feel it intuitively. They know something's wrong. What's wrong is that we're growing at 2%-ish on the broad economy, 2%-ish in terms of wage growth. We are too great a nation to settle for that kind of mediocrity. We can have 4% wage growth. We can have 6% GDP growth. I think we will with President Trump. I'm encouraged that cutting tax rates to 15% is going to unleash this dynamic force that is American innovation and hard work, and we're going to get there.
Let me give Brian the last word on this. Is Steve right, or is what we're experiencing in this very slow recovery really the dynamics of a global economy that has changed, and the kinds of jobs that used to pay $50,000, $60,000 a year no longer exist in the United States?
I mean, that's true to an extent, and it is true the global economy is so weak. The United States has had to really pull the economy along for many years. But the problem in the United States is we could be creating higher-paying jobs, but we continue to be burdened by regulation, product regulation, labor market regulation, energy regulation,
Obamacare very well could be the reason that all those 468,000 got put into part-time.
And that's right. You look at all those regulations, and you look at businesses responding, and they say, can I create jobs in this environment? Can I bear the cost? No, that's the real issue here. We can create those jobs, but we fundamentally need a reform to our regulatory approach. It's gotten much worse over the past 8 years.
Brian Brenberg, thank you very much. I think you're wearing my colors, Syracuse, orange and blue. And Steve, thank you. All the best to both of you.